Good morning, dear students of class 9. In the last class, we have learned about the term nutrition, food, and diet. Then we have learned about the need of nutrition. Then we have discussed about the balanced diet also. Okay. So today we will continue with the same chapter, nutrition. Nutrition in general, the chapter number 10, under the unit human anatomy and physiology. So today we will learn about the classes of nutrients, the food substances. Clear? So what are the different classes of nutrients or the food substances? So we have got 6 classes of food substances, and these 6 classes of food substances, also called nutrients, they are carbohydrates, fat, proteins, mineral salts, vitamins, and water. Okay, so these are the 6 classes of nutrients. What are they? Carbohydrates, fats, proteins, mineral salts, vitamins, and water. So first one is carbohydrates. So listen very carefully. All right, nothing is tough over here, so just listen very carefully and then just go through the book. Okay, so carbohydrates, they are simply the compounds which are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Clear? So they are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and the ratio between the hydrogen and oxygen is 2:1. Clear? And whenever the carbohydrates are oxidized, then the oxidation of carbohydrates will release the energy. So under carbohydrate, okay, so that means carbohydrate, it includes sugar, starch, cellulose, and they are the principal source of energy in the body. Clear? So carbohydrates are the compounds which are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, where the ratio between the hydrogen and oxygen is 2:1, and whenever the carbohydrates are oxidized, they will release energy. So they are the chief energy sources in our body. And carbohydrate includes sugar, starch, and cellulose. So first of all, we'll begin with the sugar. Okay, so sugars which are soluble in water. So we are beginning with the sugars. So sugars are soluble in water and they used to taste sweet. Okay, and broadly the sugars in our foods are of 2 major categories. And what are those categories? One is monosaccharides and the other one is disaccharides. Okay, so monosaccharides and disaccharides are the 2 major categories of sugar. So let's go with monosaccharides, also called the simple sugar or the single sugar. So it has the general formula C6H12O6. Now what is the name? Okay, C6H12O6 means simply the glucose, right? So monosaccharides include simple sugar with the general formula C6H12O6. Clear? And this need no digestion and straight away absorbed into the body. So the 3 types of simple sugar or monosaccharides are glucose, fructose, and galactose. Okay, so don't get confused. So under monosaccharides, which are also called simple sugar or single sugar, it includes glucose, fructose, and galactose. Okay, glucose, also popularly known as grape sugar, is the most common and the simplest sugar found in the organism. Okay, and 1 mole of glucose releases around 686 kilocalories of energy. Next one is fructose, which is common in plants, also popularly known as fruit sugar. Then comes the galactose, which is a simple sugar found in the milk. So sugar are of 2 types, monosaccharides and disaccharides. Under monosaccharides, we have got the 3 types of simple sugar: glucose, fructose, and galactose. The chemical formula or the general formula for the monosaccharides are C6H12O6. Clear? Okay, now let's go to the next sugar, that is disaccharides or the double sugar, and they have got the general chemical formula C12H22O11. So kindly remember the general formula for monosaccharides and for disaccharides. Clear? So the general formula for disaccharides is C12H22O11, and they require digestion to get absorbed in the body, whereas monosaccharides, there was no need of absorption or digestion because they can be straight away absorbed by the body, but disaccharides, they require digestion to get absorbed into the body. So we have got three types of double sugars also. What are the three types of double sugars? Sucrose, maltose and lactose. Okay, sucrose, maltose and lactose, these are the three types of double sugars. So sucrose is for commercial sugar. Clear? It's our commercial sugar. It is commonly obtained from the sugar cane in our country. Okay. Sucrose is a double sugar made up of two simple sugar, glucose and fructose. That means sucrose is mainly composed of glucose and fructose. Common example, the sugar that we take. Okay, the commercial sugar that we take is in the form of sucrose. It is obtained from the sugar cane. Okay. Maltose, it's made up of two glucose molecules. It's also called malt sugar. And lactose, it is made up of glucose and galactose. It's also called milk sugar. Okay, so here we are just finished sugar. We have two types, monosaccharides and disaccharides. Monosaccharide, the simple sugar with general formula C6H12O6, three types, glucose, fructose and galactose, whereas disaccharides, also called double sugar, with the general formula C12H22O11, and three types are there, sucrose, maltose and lactose. Sucrose is mainly composed of glucose and fructose. Maltose is composed of two glucose molecules, and lactose is mainly composed of glucose and galactose. Clear? So kindly remember this thing. Next one, starch, the next carbohydrate. Starch is an insoluble carbohydrates. It's in the form in the plants, commonly stored as carbohydrates, because if you remember photosynthesis, in most of the plants, right, after photosynthesis, the glucose will be changed into starch and will be synthesized. Okay, so starch is insoluble carbohydrates. It is in this form that plants commonly store carbohydrates. Potatoes, grains and breads are the chief source of starch. So kindly remember the sources of starch: potatoes, grains and bread. Okay. General formula C6H10O5N. This is the general formula of starch. So kindly remember the general formula of starch. Clear? It is called polysaccharides. Now, two other insoluble polysaccharides are cellulose and glycogen. Now, cellulose are mainly present in the plant cell wall. It is not used by our body and is not digested also. Okay, but it provides roughage for proper functioning of the gut. And glycogen is in the form in which carbohydrates are stored in the animals, mainly in the liver. So starch is an insoluble carbohydrates, mainly from the potatoes, grains and breads we used to get the starch. General formula C6H10O5N. It's also called the polysaccharides, and we have got mainly two types of polysaccharides, cellulose and glycogen. Cellulose is the chief constituents of the plant cell walls, and in case of animals in our body it is not digested. Okay, but it provides one of the most important roughage which is essential for the proper functioning of our gut. Okay, and glycogen is mainly stored in the liver cells or in the muscles. It is the most important form of carbohydrates. Clear? Okay. Now, next one, fats, which are composed of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen content in these nutrients is much less. Look at the fats. It's mainly composed of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. So whenever we are talking about the classes of nutrients, we have to remember their compositions. Okay, so carbohydrates are mainly composed of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, right? And with the ratio of hydrogen and oxygen was 2:1. So here fat is also composed of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and the oxygen content is much less. Okay, and they produce more energy than carbohydrates. So 1 mole of fat releases around 9.45 kilocalories of energy. So kindly remember this one. Okay, so 1 mole of fat it releases around 9.45 kilocalories of energy. And the common food rich in fats are butter, clarified butter, ghee, okay, cheese, vegetable oils, beef, and fish liver oil. These are the chief source of fats in our diet, okay. And fats and oils are made up of fatty acids and glycerols. Now let's talk about the functions of fat. It produces energy in the body like carbohydrate, simple. The important storage form of food. Third one, it serves as a solvent for fat soluble vitamins. Fat under the skin protect the body against a rapid loss of heat. It acts as insulator. It will trap the body heat. Clear? These are the general functions of fat. Number third is proteins, which are the large chemical molecules. They contain carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Till now, the composition of fat and carbohydrate was simply carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. But now for protein, you can see the chief component is nitrogen. So nitrogen is the most essential element in the protein. And some proteins may also contain sulfur and phosphorus. And amino acids are the building block of the proteins. Clear? Now protein provides chemical material for the growth, for the repair of body cells and the tissues which are damaged. In the time of emergency also, they may also be oxidized to release energy. So these are the general functions of protein in our body. Okay, so remember that proteins are large chemical molecules. They contain carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. And nitrogen is the most essential component or the element in protein. Okay, and some of the proteins may also contain sulfur and phosphorus. And what are amino acids? Amino acids are the building block of protein. Okay, they will lead to the formation of a protein, because protein is a long chain of polypeptide. Okay, and of amino acids. So amino acids are the building block of the proteins. And what is the general function of proteins? Protein provide chemical material for the growth. So for the growth of the body, we require protein. Whenever our body cells, our body tissues will be damaged, we require protein. Okay, and in time of emergency also, these proteins will be oxidized to release the energy. So food rich in protein, the sources of protein is mainly from lean meat, fish, egg, milk, cheese, nut, beans, pea. These are the general sources of proteins in our diet. Okay, and deficiency of proteins will lead to weakness, but in severe conditions, in severe deficiency of proteins, and individuals will suffer from two types of diseases. And what are those two diseases? First one is kwashiorkor, and number two is marasmus. Okay, so these are the two diseases which are caused due to the deficiency of protein that leads to weakness. Number one is kwashiorkor, and number two is marasmus. Okay, so these are the two types of diseases which are caused due to the deficiency of protein in the diet. Clear? Okay, so this kwashiorkor and marasmus. Alright, the deficiency of protein we will continue with the next class. Okay, so in the next class again we will continue with the protein, and we will discuss about the diseases which are caused due to the deficiency of protein. That means I am simply breaking these classes of nutrients into two parts. Okay, into two theory 1 and theory 2. Clear? So in theory 2 or in part 2 we will again continue with the proteins and the deficiency, so don't get confused.